response. Hi. Yeah. Let me set up proper here. And then we can get started. We're on Samuel, 1 Samuel, and chapters 13 through 14. There's only 2 today before we head up Psalms 81, and then we can call today a wrap. Okay? 1 Samuel 13, no devotional, nothing like that. So it should be rather quick. Maybe. Who knows? Continued war with Philistia. Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 42 years. Saul selected 3,000 special troops from the army of Israel and sent the rest of the men home. He took 2,000 of the chosen men with him to Michmash. That's what I got. Michmash is such a weird name, though. Michmash, and the hill country of Bethel. The other 1,000 went with Saul's son Jonathan to Geba in the land of Benjamin. Soon after this, Jonathan attacked and defeated the garrison of Philistines at Geba. The news spread quickly among the Philistines, so Saul blew the ram's horn throughout the land, saying, "Hebrews, hear this! Rise up in revolt!" All Israel heard the news that Saul had destroyed the Philistine garrison at Geba, and that the Philistines now hated the Israelites more than ever. So the entire Israelite army was summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. The Philistines mustered a mighty army of 30,000 chariots, 60,000 charioteers, and as many warriors as the grain of sands as the seashore. They camped at Michmash east of Beth Aven. The men of Israel saw what a tight spot they were in, and because they were hard pressed by the enemy, they tried to hide in caves, thickets, rocks, holes, and cisterns. Some of them crossed the Jordan River and escaped into the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul's disobedience and Samuel's rebuke. Meanwhile, Saul stayed at Gilgal, and his men were trembling with fear. Saul waited there 7 days for Samuel, as Samuel had instructed him earlier, but Samuel still didn't come. Saul realized that his troops were rapidly slipping away, so he demanded, "Bring me the burnt offerings and the peace offerings." And Saul sacrificed the burnt offerings himself. Just as Saul was finishing with the burnt offering, Samuel arrived. Saul went out to meet and welcome him, but Samuel said, "What is this you have done?" Saul replied, "I saw my men scattering from me, and you didn't arrive when you said you would, and the Philistines are at Michmash ready for battle. So I said, the Philistines are ready to march against us at Gilgal, and I haven't even asked for the Lord's help. So I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering myself before you came." "How foolish!" Samuel exclaimed. "You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. Had you kept it, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. Now your kingdom must end, for the Lord has sought out a man after his own heart. The Lord has already appointed him to be the leader of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." Israel's military disadvantage. Samuel then left Gilgal and went on his way, but the rest of the troops went with Saul to meet the army. They went up from Gilgal to Geba in the land of Benjamin. Then Saul counted the men who were still with him. He found 600 were left. Saul and Jonathan and the troops with them were staying at Geba in the land of Benjamin. The Philistines set up their camp at Michmash. 3 raiding parties soon left the camp of the Philistines. One went north toward Ophrah in the land of Shual. Another went west to Beth Horon, and the third moved toward the border above the valley of Zeboim. Yeah, near the wilderness. There were no blacksmiths in the land of Israel in those days. The Philistines wouldn't allow them for fear they would make swords and spears for the Hebrews. So whenever the Israelites needed to sharpen their plowshares, picks, axes, or sickles, they had to take them to a Philistine blacksmith. The charges were as followed: a quarter of an ounce of silver for sharpening a plowshare or a pick, and an eighth of an ounce for sharpening an axe or making the point of an axe gold. So on the day of the battle, none of the people of Israel had a sword or spear except for Saul and Jonathan. The pass at Michmash had meanwhile been secured by a contingent of the Philistine army. So he's like, you didn't come, so I did the sacrifice myself. Because I felt like the Philistines were getting ready for, I felt the pressure of the Philistines getting ready for battle, and I hadn't yet asked the Lord for help. So instead of waiting for you, I felt compelled to proceed because you hadn't shown up. When you told me you was going to show up, the clock was ticking. So I needed to do it myself. And in doing so, the compulsion I felt was actually disobedience to the Lord. So instead of like, when he felt that compulsion, instead of feeling that compulsion and going, yes, I'm right, I should just do this myself, because that's what he saw to be right rather than the commands of the Lord that he was following, he did what he felt was right in order to ask for the Lord's help. The intentions were good. But he was disobedient nonetheless. And then the other thing, I remember reading, I don't know if I read it or watched it or whatever, or there was a sermon or something, but there was something that was said and it stuck to me, and it was like, God's not in a hurry. God's not in a hurry. You're in a hurry. And that's why you think your blessings and your messages and the powers at play aren't in your favor, because you're so rushed by your own schedule, your own view on the field, the battlefield, essentially. You're so rushed by those things that you feel like you get these compulsions that you have to take it into your own hands, or else it's not going to be done. So one of the things I'm trying to reach, or one of the hopes I have for my life, is that I reach a moment where I can go through life minus the hurry. Not that I want to take it slow and easy all the time, but I want to know that no matter what pressures I feel from my own schedule and deadlines and, you know, these arbitrary deadlines sometimes that we see, and these arbitrary pressures that we feel cannot hurry God's plan. Like, I can't put those things onto God's plan. Like, God, don't you see that I'm stuck here? Like, it's almost time. Can you do something? You know, I don't want to feel that level of pressure to even get it to the Lord. So usually when I feel that level of pressure and then I'm tense, I take a break. And I know that sounds stupid. Like, the deadline could be in a couple hours or whatever, or a couple days. Like, if it's a couple days, I'm going to take a day off. It's a couple hours, I'm giving myself 30 minutes. If it's like, you know, whatever it is, because otherwise I'm going to get swallowed by this own, like, construct of what time is, and it's going to hinder my ability to do the task in a fateful way, in a head, a more blessed headspace, so to speak. Sometimes I don't need like physical blessings, I just need mental ones. Like, and that break is just so that I can go and recoup and realize that the time constraints are as dire as, you know, I'm making them out to be, or, you know, none of that is really as constricting as it's meant to be. And some of these are just arbitrarily thrown around, and I get so committed to that pressure of like, oh, I need it at this time, that I don't realize that moment, that deadline could come and go, and the work can still get done, and it can still get to where it needs to be in excellence. Like, I don't have to feel like I failed somehow by missing that first deadline that was in place, or something like that, because we gotta figure out I gotta figure out the construct of a true hard consequential deadline, and one of those like, I want this done before blah blah blah, and that's like my deadline. You know? Because the only deadlines I really want to see favor in. Like, I always see God come into play, and he always does his work before that, like, hard, consequential deadline is in place. He skips all the other non-consequential ones that I put on myself, and he makes sure that it comes into play by the time that hard consequences I'm facing are in play. And it'd be right at the gate, like right where that deadline's coming up, and it's like, so that frustration, that like fear, that initial deadline, the pressure of all that, like for Saul in this moment, he's like, yeah, they're setting up camp, and that was his deadline. Saul said he's gonna come around. Samuel said he's coming around this time, and Trap was hard at that time. We're not giving him no wiggle room, no nothing. This is blurring loud, I'm sorry. We're not giving him no wiggle room, no nothing, and like, okay, well, I gotta take this into my own hands now because they're setting up camp and I haven't asked. So he's feeling this pressure of his own consequential deadline. But the real pressure would have been when they actually were at your gates, where like in front of you, armed, on the move. Other than that, you need to hold your like breathing down your neck with their swords in hand. That's when the real set in stone deadline is. But they were still setting up, which means like setup takes, like, you don't go set up, I'm done. Sometimes this setup takes longer than people give it credit. Like, the setup takes long. People aren't giving it time when the setup takes long. So so he loses his kingdom in this moment. And that compulsion was a call for him to be faithful. Like, that's when faith should have stepped in. Like, nah, I was told to wait for Samuel, for him for him to handle the sacrificial ceremonies. That compulsion was a call to take a break and be with God. So, yeah, I'm gonna let you know how it goes with that. I've gotten better at like trying to not really agitate my spirit because of artificial deadlines, but bruh, it's not the easiest thing to do. 1 Samuel 14. Jonathan's daring plan. One day, Jonathan said to his armor bearer, "Come on, let's go over to where the Philistines have their outposts." But Jonathan did not tell his father what he was doing. Meanwhile, Saul and his 600 men were camped on the outskirts of Geba around the pomegranate tree at Migron. Among Saul's men was Ahijah, the priest, who was wearing the ephod, the priestly vest. Ahijah was the son of Ichabod's brother, Ahitub, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord who had served at Shiloh. No one realized that Jonathan had left the Israelite camp to reach the Philistine outpost. Jonathan had to go down between two rocky cliffs that were called Bozez and Sineh. The cliff on the north was in front of Michmash, and the one on the south was in front of Geba. Let's go across to the outposts of those pagans. Oh, sorry. of those pagans, Jonathan said to his armor bearer. Perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord. He can win a battle whether he has many warriors or only a few. Do what you think is best, the armor bearer replied. I am with you completely, whatever you decide. All right, then, Jonathan told him, we will cross over and let them see us. If they say to us, stay where you are or we'll kill you, then we will stop and not go up to them. But if they say, come on up and fight, then we will go up. That will be the Lord's sign that he will help us defeat them. When the Philistines saw them coming, they shouted, look, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes. Then the men from the outpost shouted to Jonathan, come on up here and we'll teach you a lesson. Come on, climb right behind me, Jonathan said to his armor bearer, for the Lord will help us defeat them. So they climbed up using both hands and feet, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer killed those who came behind them. They killed some 20 men in all, and their bodies were scattered over about half an acre. Suddenly, panic broke out in the Philistine army, both in the camp and in the field, including even the outposts and raiding parties. And just then, an earthquake struck, and everyone was terrified. Israel defeats the Philistines. Saul's lookouts in Geba of Benjamin saw a strange sight. The vast army of the Philistines began to melt away in every direction. Call the roll and find out who's missing, Saul ordered. And when they checked, they found that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone. Then Saul shouted to Ahijah, bring the ephod here. For at that time Ahijah was wearing the ephod in front of the Israelites. But when Saul was talking to the priest, the confusion in the Philistine camp grew louder and louder. So Saul said to the priest, never mind, let's get going. Then Saul and all his men rushed out of the battle and found the Philistines killing each other. I love that when confusion takes the camp, that means that they're fighting themselves. There was terrible confusion everywhere. Even the Hebrews who had previously gone over to the Philistine army revolted and joined in with Saul, Jonathan, and the rest of the Israelites. Likewise, the men of Israel who were hiding in the hill country of Ephraim joined the chase when they saw the Philistines running away. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle continued to rage even beyond Beth Avim. Saul's foolish oath. Now the men of Israel were pressed to exhaustion that day, because Saul had placed them under an oath, saying, let a curse fall upon anyone who eats before evening, before I have full revenge on my enemies. So no one ate anything all day. Even though they had all found the honeycomb on the ground in the forest, they didn't dare touch the honey because they all feared the oath they had taken. But Jonathan had not heard his father's command, and he dipped the end of his stick into a piece of honeycomb and ate it. After he had eaten it, he felt refreshed. But one of the men saw him and said, your father made the army take a strict oath that anyone who eats food today will be cursed. And that is why everyone is weary and faint. My father has made trouble for us all, Jonathan exclaimed. A command like that only hurts us. See how refreshed I am now that I have eaten this little bit of honey. If the men had been allowed to eat freely from the food they found among our enemies, then think how many more Philistines we could have killed. They chased and killed the Philistines all day from Michmash to Ajigalon, growing more and more faint. That evening they rushed for the battle plunder and butchered the sheep, goats, cattle, and calves, but they ate them without draining the blood. Ooh, problematic. Oh no. What does that mean? Oh no. No, that's not what I want to hit. They ate them without draining blood. Oh no. Someone reported to Saul, look, the men are sinning against the Lord by eating meat that still has blood in it. "This is very wrong," Saul said. "Find a large stone and roll it over here. Then go out among the troops and tell them, bring the cattle, sheep, and goats here to me. Kill them here and drain the blood before you eat them. Do not sin against the Lord by eating meat with the blood still in it." So that night all the troops brought their animals and slaughtered them there. Then Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first of his altars he built to the Lord. Then Saul said, "Let's chase the Philistines all night and plunder them until sunrise. Let's destroy every last one of them." His men replied, "We'll do whatever you think is best." But the priest said, "Let's ask God first." So Saul asked God, "Should we go after the Philistines? Will you help us defeat them?" But God had no reply that day. Then Saul said to the leaders, "Something's wrong. I want my army commanders to come here. We must find out what sin was committed today. I vow by the name of the Lord who rescued Israel that the sinner will surely die, even if it's my own son Jonathan." Oh man. But no one will tell him what the trouble was. Then Saul said, "Jonathan and I will stand over here, and all of you stand over there." And the people responded to Saul, "Whatever you think is best." Then Saul prayed, "O Lord, God of Israel, please show us who is guilty and who is innocent." Then they cast sacred lots, and Jonathan and Saul were chosen as the guilty ones, and the people were declared innocent. Then Saul said, "Now cast lots again and choose between me and Jonathan." And Jonathan was showed to be the guilty one. "Tell me what you have done," Saul demanded of Jonathan. "I tasted a little honey," Jonathan admitted. "It was only a little bit on the end of my stick. Does that deserve death?" "Yes, Jonathan," Saul said. "You must die. May God strike me and even kill me if you do not die for this." But the people broke in and said to Saul, "Jonathan has won this great victory for Israel." No. God won that victory. "Should he die? Far from it. As surely as the Lord lives, not one hair on his head will be touched, for God helped him do a great deed today." So the people rescued Jonathan, and he was not put to death. Then Saul called back the army from chasing the Philistines, and the Philistines returned home. Saul's military successes. Now when Saul had secured his grasp on Israel's throne, he fought against the enemies in every direction, against Moab, Ammon, Edom, and the kings of Zobah, and the Philistines. And wherever he turned, he was victorious. He performed great deeds and conquered the Amalekites, saving Israel from all those who had plundered them. Saul's sons included Jonathan, Ishbosheth, and Malchishua. He also had two daughters, Merab, who was older, and Michal. Saul's wife was Ahinoam, the daughter of Ahimaaz. The commander of Saul's army was Abner, the son of Saul's uncle Ner. Saul's father Kish and Abner's father Ner were both sons of Abel. The Israelites fought constantly with the Philistines throughout Saul's lifetime, so whenever Saul observed a young man who was brave and strong, he drafted him into his army. For the choir director, a psalm of Asaph, to be accompanied by stringed instruments. I sing praises to God, our strength. Sing to the God of Jacob. Sing, beat the tambourine, play the sweet lyre and harp, blow the ram's horn at new moon, and again at full moon to call a festival. For this is required by the decrees of Israel. It is a regulation of the God of Jacob. He made it a law for Israel when he attacked Egypt to set us free. I heard an unknown voice say, "Now I will take the load from your shoulders. I will free your hearts from their heavy task. You cried to me in trouble, and I saved you. I answered out of the thundercloud and tested your faith when there was no water at Meribah. Listen to me, O people. Listen to me, O my people, while I give you stern warnings." Listen to me, O my people, while I give you stern warnings. O Israel, if you only would listen to me. You must never have a foreign god. You must not bow down before a false god, for it is I, the Lord your God, who rescued you from the land of Egypt. Open your mouth wide, and I will fill it with good things. But no, my people wouldn't listen. Israel did not want me around, so I let them follow their own stubborn desires, living according to their own ideas. Oh, that my people would listen to me. Oh, that Israel would follow me, walking in my paths. How quickly I would then subdue their enemies. How soon my hands would be upon their foes. Those who hate the Lord will cringe before him. They would be doomed forever. But I would feed you with the finest wheat. I would satisfy you with wild honey from the rock. Wild honey from the rock. That's provision. That's provision. Okay, I'm gonna go. Bye. Have a good one. Adios.